This is Duke University.
All right, good morning, everyone. I hope that you are all doing well. Thanks for joining today's session on immigration options to the UK for Duke graduates. My name is Hal Matthews, and I am an Associate Director for Global Careers over at the Duke Career Center. I'm feeling very fortunate today to have a distinguished speaker with us who's going to provide some valuable insights into various UK immigration pathways. Our primary focus is going to be on the high potential individual visa, or the HPI visa for short. This is a unique visa that's available exclusively to recent graduates of the world's top 50 ranked universities, including Duke. One of the biggest advantages of the HPI visa is that it allows holders to enter the UK without a job offer or employer sponsorship, which makes the process of securing job opportunities in the UK much more flexible. So before we get into that, I have a few very quick notes. Elena, as a legal professional, is going to give you an overview of UK immigration and the high potential individual visa, but she won't be covering specific job search strategies or employer hiring trends for the UK specifically. If you're looking for career guidance and help with your job search in the UK, please connect with your career center. And I'm happy to chat if you are in one of the programs served by the main career center. And if you're in a professional school, you can reach out to your team there as well. This session is being recorded, and I'm going to share the link out afterward. I'm going to be monitoring the chat, so feel free to drop any questions that you have in there. Elena will address as many questions as she can at the end after her presentation. And lastly, I would love your input on future programming. So we had a lot of interest in today's session, and we'd like to know what else would interest you. So I'm going to drop a link right now to a one-question survey. And if you're interested in learning about immigration options for other countries other than the UK, please fill that out and let us know where you'd be interested in learning more about so we can set up more sessions like this in the future. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Elena Tsirlina from CDS Mayfair. Elena has been a solicitor since 2006, specializing in immigration, nationality, asylum, and human rights law. She joined CDS Mayfair in 2018 after merging her own boutique law firm into the practice. She has extensive experience advising high net worth individuals, global professionals, and students, and she provides bespoke legal services to English, Russian, and Arabic-speaking migrants. Elena is also the author of A Practical Guide to Immigration Law Relating to Students, so she literally wrote the book on this topic, and she has published a number of specialist articles as well. And as a member of the Immigration Law Practitioners Association, she brings a wealth of expertise in navigating UK visa options. So very excited to have you here, Elena, and I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Hal, for that lovely introduction. I'm going to jump right in so we can leave enough time for Q&A at the end of this session. As Hal said previously, please leave your questions in the chat, and Hal will kindly pick out the questions for me to answer at the end of the webinar. I will provide the following overview of the high potential individual visa. We're going to deal with general information, immigration requirements as they laid out in the immigration rules and policy. We're going to talk about period and conditions of grant, whether family members such as your spouse, partner, and children under the age of 18 can join you when you travel to the UK. We're going to talk about the step-by-step immigration and application process, fees and processing times. We're going to talk about the digitalization of the immigration process in the UK and the introduction of the e-visas as of 1st of January this year. We will also briefly touch upon your ability to switch to other immigration routes while you're in the UK on an HPI visa. And at the end, we're going to have approximately 25 to 20 minutes to talk about the issues that interest you specifically. So let's start. The HPI is a temporary immigration work route that was introduced by the Conservative government on the 30th of May 2022. So it's about to celebrate its third anniversary this year. It's a relatively new route. It does not in itself lead to settlement. Therefore, at the end of your stay in the UK, you will not be able to apply for indefinite leave to remain. It's aimed at people like you, at international graduates who are awarded an overseas degree level academic degree equivalent to a UK bachelor's or postgraduate degree. The qualification must have been awarded within 5 years prior to the application being made. It must be from a university that appears on the Global Universities List, GUL for short, which covers the award. This list is published annually, and the Duke University has been consistently included in that list for the past 5 years. You don't need to have a job offer prior to applying to qualify for this visa. It is an unsponsored route, one of very few, that allows you to work in the UK once you're here with a visa without having a job offer or a sponsor. Partners and children under the age of 18 years old can apply to come with you. And of course, you can use a legal representative when you submit your application. So let's jump into the first immigration requirement. The way that the immigration requirements are set out, you will first find they're set out in a fairly approachable but also very general manner, laid out in the immigration rules. The immigration rules is a piece of legislation that's laid out before the English Parliament. And the Parliament has a negative vote. It means that if they don't vote against a certain piece of legislation, i.e. the immigration rules, it becomes law. It goes into force. So these immigration requirements that I'm going to talk about today are taken directly from the immigration route, from the immigration rules, namely from the appendix that relates specifically to HPI. So let's get on with it. In order for your application to be valid, you need to meet the following requirements. You can apply for HPI either in the UK or outside, depending on where you are at the time of application. It's quite flexible. You need to apply using a specified online application form. The UK Visas and Immigration website is sometimes very difficult to navigate. That one thing it's very good at is navigating it towards the right kind of application form online. When you come to the end of the filling in your form, it takes approximately 20 to 25 minutes to fill in an HPI form. You must pay a Home Office fee. We will talk about the amount later, and also an immigration health charge. This is not insurance. This is a medical charge that you pay the UK government in order to be able to use NHS, i.e. public medical services, when you come here. Once you have submitted your form and paid your fees, you must make an appointment to enroll your biometrics. This can be done in person or using an app. You must provide a passport or a valid travel document that confirms your identity and nationality. In order to qualify, you must be aged 18 years old or over. And you must not have previously been granted permission under the Student Doctorate Extension Scheme, a graduate visa, or an HPI. There are some additional requirements and restrictions for those who are applying for permission to stay in the UK as students, because there are certain switching restrictions for them. But given that you will, for the most part, if you are applying, will be applying from outside of the UK, then these additional restrictions and requirements do not apply to you. The second requirement is suitability. This is a very broadly worded requirement that basically says if you have been involved in any wrongdoing of any kind, from criminality to war crimes, then you will be precluded from making this application. It also talks about certain infringements of UK immigration laws, and I'm sure you're all very upstanding, but you must be very much aware of what these suitability requirements are before you set out to make the application. I will be sharing the slides with Hal later for him to distribute them to all of you, so you can read more about this. Suitability requirements do not usually come up in straightforward applications, but there are some who are caught by it. For example, if you have had adverse immigration history in the past, you filled in an immigration form incorrectly and it was refused on the basis of misrepresentation, you will have to notify the UKVI of this past refusal. Otherwise, you can be refused in the future on the basis of deception. So all of this falls squarely within suitability. And the most important requirement to meet is the eligibility requirement. In order to enter the UK as an HPI, you must be granted entry clearance prior to making your trip to the UK. Entry clearance is essentially asking for permission to come to the UK on an HPI visa. And entry clearance is a yellow endorsement. It's a vignette that's eventually going to be stamped in your passport, allowing you 90 days to come to the UK. And then you will be able to enjoy the fruits of the HPI visa. Those who are applying for entry clearance may need to provide a TB certificate. Those who are applying from the US and have been living there for 6 months will not be required to do so. If you're applying from outside of the US, you need to check specific TB requirements. It depends on which country you're applying from and how long you've been living there for. The main requirement is for you to score 70 points. It's a mandatory requirement, and it's broken down as follows. You need to score 50 points for qualifying for having a GUL degree. You must have been awarded an overseas degree level academic qualification, which is equivalent to, as I said before, to UK bachelor's or postgraduate degree. The degree must have been awarded within 5 years immediately prior to the date of application. So, for example, if you're graduating this year or next year or the year after, should Duke University remain on the list, you will qualify. If you're currently doing postgrad after completing your undergrad with Duke, you will equally qualify based on your past award. The equivalency of the degree and the date of the award, 2 components, must be confirmed by Actis. Actis serves as a body that confirms the equivalency and validity of your degree for the purposes of applying for HPI. I will later, when we do the QA, share a link to the relevant page on the Actis website that will let you see how long it takes, how much it costs, and what the requirements are in terms of communicating with Actis for this purpose. There is no requirement for how the qualifying degree is delivered. It can be delivered remotely or in person because the UKVI accepts that some degree courses were delivered remotely during the recent pandemic. The next requirement is the English language requirement. If you have come and are coming and are a national of a majority English-speaking country, you will qualify automatically by providing your passport. If you are US nationals, then you will qualify. If you do not qualify on this basis, then you will qualify on the basis of having completed your degree at Duke. Therefore, you will not, in either case, have to take an English language test. The last requirement is the financial requirement. You must have in your account at least £1,270 or equivalent in any country, in any currency. That money must be held in your account for 28 days in the 31 days prior to the date of application. If you're applying for permission to stay in the UK, that is within the UK, and you have resided here for 12 months or longer, you will meet this requirement automatically, and you won't have to provide any documents to confirm it. In order to confirm in order to comply with the financial requirement, you will need to provide your bank statements showing that you have sufficient funds and the level of your funds in your account have not depleted on a daily basis within the 28-day period. If you have completed a bachelor or master's degree of equivalent at Duke, then you will be granted 2 years on HPI. If you have completed your PhD or another doctoral level qualification, you will be granted permission for 3 years. What you need to know about this visa is that it is very flexible insofar as your employment in the UK is concerned. It is actually very rare to have this type of flexibility in a visa. I must stress that. So when you come to the UK, you can be employed, self-employed, or working in a voluntary capacity. You don't have to work at all if you don't want to. That's why there is no need to have a job offer before you come. You can spend the 2 or 3 years that you have looking for work. I will explain a little bit later that this may be up for a change, but no changes have been announced in this respect yet. UK immigration law, just like the US and other forms of immigration law, is very fluid and subject to change. So I always advise people to grab an opportunity when it presents itself, because changes for the worse may come and there may be punitive changes down the line. The only job you can't take up is that of a professional sports person or a sports coach. I'm sure it doesn't apply to any of you, any one of you. Therefore, you can work in most jobs or use the time in the UK to spend your time on LinkedIn, browsing various recruitment pages. It's entirely up to you. You can also catch up on your studies in the UK. The only thing you can't do is study with a student sponsor. That means that excludes the majority of higher education providers. Any studies that you do undertake will be subject to ATAS condition. The ATAS condition usually relates to certain degree courses, including aviation, petrochemical industry, etc. Yeah. When you come to make the application, you can add to your application form your dependents, if you have any, and that means a partner stroke spouse or a child aged 18 or under. They can also apply separately from you. They don't have to apply at the same time as you. So, for example, if you are granted a visa next week and you want your partner and child to fly out to meet you 3 months down the line, they can apply separately. But at the end of the day, the expiry date of your visas will be the same. A person applying for entry clearance or permission to stay as a partner or child of an HPI individual must meet eligibility and suitability requirements, which are similar to those that you must meet as an HPI main applicant. To be eligible, the partner of the HPI applicant must meet relationship requirements. That means that you either must be married or have been cohabiting together under the same roof for at least 2 years. The child must meet care, age, and independent life requirements. There is also a number of financial requirements for a partner or child applying for entry clearance. This can be seen on your screens. So you must have additional funds in your account for the same period as your own funds. So if, for example, you're applying with a partner, instead of just having £1,270 in your account, you must also add £285 to that amount. The overall amount must be held in your account for 28 days. And as I said, the period of grant for your partner and child will be the same as that for you. So how does one apply? Firstly, you must find the specified form online. You can do that by searching the UKVI website. As I said, it's quite good at signposting the correct forms. It will take you on a screen by screen. It's a very clear step-by-step process. You can't jump across several pages ahead, so you must have all of the information that you need with you when you start the application process. It does take approximately 20 to 25 minutes. You can save the form and sort of frame freeze it if you want. You can download it for your own benefit as a PDF onto your computer to work on it offline, and then you can go back up. It's a following a two-step verification process online. You can go back into your form to make corrections before you submit it. You must make sure the details contained in the application forms are accurate, because I'll signpost you back to my suitability warning. You must make sure that the details you are disclosing to UKVI are correct and will then be supported by the documents that you're providing separately later. You can't be flippant about the way you submit the form or the application. At the end of the process, you will come to submit your form. Before you submit it, you will be redirected to the to another part of the UKVI website to enable you to pay first the immigration health surcharge and then the Home Office fees. Once you've paid all the fees, you will receive an email confirming both of these payments have been made and your application form has been successfully submitted. Once you've submitted the application form, you will be required to register with VFS Global. VFS Global, you may be familiar with it by applying for visas to other countries. It's a commercial partner of UK Visas and Immigration, and it serves as an intermediary between UK Visas and Immigration and yourself in order to ensure transparency and independence. VFS Global provides a number of add-on services, including premium services, which are payable separately, so their fees are entirely separate from the Home Office fees. You will need to book an appointment with a visa application center. There are hundreds of them throughout the US. And there is a dual purpose to this, because if you are not using an app, then you will need to physically enroll your biometrics and also send your passport to the New York hub using a UPS courier. They will send you a sticker. You will download the sticker, stick it onto your envelope, send it to the New York hub. And if you want to keep your passport while the application is being provided, you will have to pay one of the add-on service fees. Once you have booked your biometrics and registered with VFS Global, you will be required to upload your supporting documents electronically. If you're not able to do so for whatever reason, you'll need to provide hard copies for scanning at the visa application center or send them to the New York hub together with your passport. The difficulty in the States, I find, is that the UKVI requires you to provide all the documents on an A4 in an A4 format, and clients find it incredibly difficult finding A4 paper in the States, and if they do, it costs a lot. Therefore, make sure that you prepare all of the documents and you're able to upload them at least 24 hours before your biometric appointment, because if you miss that deadline, you will be in real difficulties, because then you will enter a logistical nightmare with VFS Global. And it's very much outside of the Home Office's hands how VFS Global operates its operations in the States. You will also be required to provide your passport or travel document before or at your biometric appointment, or by putting it in an envelope and sending it to the New York hub. Alternatively, you may be able to prove your identity using the UK Immigration ID Check app by downloading it from Apple or Android store. You may be able to use it if you're prompted to do so when you start the application process. and you will be guided through it by the UKVI website. The fees are as follows. So the first fee that you will incur will be the Actis fee. Actis will carry out checks based on the documents that you provide to Actis if you're applying from outside of the UK. Actis can also confirm that your course was delivered in the English language, therefore you will comply with both the HPI and the English language requirement in one go. Actis will then provide you with a letter confirming your equivalency. The first fee that you will need to pay when you submit your application will be the Home Office fee of £822. There are additional fees for each dependent child and dependent partner. It's the same fee payable for both. The immigration house charge is split depending on age. If you're aged 18 and over and applying as the main applicant or partner, then the fee will be £1,035 per year. So if you're applying for a 2-year visa, this will be £2,070 per person. If you're applying with a child, then the child will be charged £776 per year. Processing times are quite good when you're applying in the States. Usually applications are processed very quickly within 3 weeks. If you're applying in the UK, the actual stated time is 8 weeks, but in my practice, it takes a number of days for this application to be processed in the UK. So it's quite quick. Now onto the e-visa. If your application is successful and it's approved, then your passport will be endorsed with the yellow sticker, which is a vignette, notifying the immigration officer at port that you have been granted entry clearance. That sticker, together with the decision, which will be served usually by email, will signify to whoever's checking you in for the flight, and then to the immigration officer in the UK, let's say at Heathrow. It will signify that you have been granted entry clearance. It does not mean that you will automatically be granted leave to enter. You may still be subject to examination at the port of entry in the UK, so you need to bear that in mind. The vignette or entry clearance is valid for 90 days, which will allow you to make travel arrangements while you're waiting for everything else to come through. And that gives you enough time, for example, to find a job if you haven't already secured one. You will use this vignette to travel and enter the UK. In the decision letter, you will be instructed to register for a UK visas and immigration account. This is done online. Once you've done it and you have paired it with the decision, you will be able to see your e-visa online. You can use it as an app on your phone. You can get access to it online. An e-visa is essentially an immigration record, and it's used instead of a biometric residence permit as of 1st of January this year. It's been superseded. People who have been issued with biometric residence permits are still able to use them to travel until the end of March, but they're going to be phased out as of the end of March, and everybody will be using e-visas from then on. It's undergone sort of a trial period in the last couple of months. There've been teething problems, but I think the technical problems have, for the most part, been ironed out. And now you're able to use your e-visa to travel, to prove your right to work, study, and rent in the UK. And you do that by generating a share code on your either phone or laptop, which will be passed on to another third party, your landlord, for example, or an estate agent, or an employer, or an education provider, to signify that you have the correct immigration status, allowing you to study, work, and live in the UK. While you are in the UK on an HPI visa, you will be able to switch to other business immigration routes, and these routes lead to settlement. So, for example, if you spend the next couple of years in employment that doesn't get you anywhere, you will be able to switch into another visa, provided that you can secure a job or open a business or prove yourself in another way. And this way you will be able to get into a status that will eventually give you indefinite leave to remain in the UK with a view to British citizenship. I'll briefly touch upon the three routes that I have highlighted on my screen. So the skilled worker visa is probably the most used and the most popular route. It's predicated by whether you're able to secure a qualifying and eligible job with an appropriate salary. The skilled worker visa is a sponsored route, and it allows employers in the UK to hire people to work here, provided that the skilled worker is in an eligible skilled occupation. And the sponsor is duly licensed by the Home Office. You can usually find a finite list of all of the sponsors who are registered on the register of sponsors. It's an Excel spreadsheet that's updated by the UKVI daily, and it's available online. It's a very transparent way. And actually, it helps you in finding jobs, because if you find a vacancy that's published somewhere and you're not sure whether the vacancy is something that you need, for example, for a sponsored job, the one way of doing it would be to download the register of sponsors to check whether your prospective employer is on the register of sponsors and is able to give you a certificate of sponsorship. This route leads to settlement in 5 years, and that applies to you as the main applicant and to your dependent that you either brought with you from the States on an HPI visa or who are just joining you for the first time. The next route is a global talent route, and it's for people who are aged 18, and it's split between different fields, from science, engineering, humanities to digital tech, arts and culture, etc. And these are for people who can exhibit and demonstrate that they have exceptional talent to exceptional promise, depending really on their track record and ability to provide certain documents in the past 5 years, depending on their activities. Also depends on their ability to get a job in a certain discipline or have their application peer reviewed. It is again, like an HPI, an unsponsored route, but it does require endorsement, unlike an HPI visa. And it involves a two-stage process leading to settlement after 3 years or 5 years in the UK, and it depends entirely on which level you're at and who endorses you. Again, family members can follow you to the UK, join you and apply for settlement, but they can only qualify for settlement after 5 years, not after 3. So the expedition does not apply to them. And lastly, the Innovator Founder Visa. Unlike the Global Talent Visa, it does not look backwards, it looks forward, and it's an entirely commercial route. It's very similar to the now defunct entrepreneur route, and it leads to settlement after 3 years. And it depends entirely on the commercial success of your business that you will go on to set up in the UK. It's suitable for a person who would like to establish a business. The business has to adhere to very strict criteria of being innovative, viable, and scalable. And this business idea must have been generated by you, or you must have significantly contributed to the idea. You must prepare a business plan and a pitch deck, and you must provide them to an endorsing body, and that endorsing body is licensed by the UK Visas and Immigration. There are very few remaining endorsing bodies because there was a review of them in 23, which reduced the number of endorsing bodies to a handful. And they're very picky as to what kind of businesses they actually endorse. They've seen pretty much every pitch under the sun. So your pitch has to have particular USP for them to like it. You must play a key role in the day-to-day management and development of the business. Eventually, you will have to comply with very stringent KPIs in order to be able to apply for settlement at the end of the road. And this is where most businesses stumble when they start at the startup stage, because not only do you need to invest £50,000 into the business along the way, there is no such requirement at the beginning. You must also hire up to 10 employees or have very, very high revenues up to £1 million in the last year, or take significant steps to protect IP and do R&D for your business. You must meet at least 2 of the requirements in order to satisfy settlement eligibility criteria, but I have to warn you, it is quite tough. So we are now going to move into Q&A very swiftly. I was going to say, before we go into Q&A, I wrote a very, very short article on LinkedIn yesterday warning everybody that changes are coming to international students in the UK. The UK government is about to publish a white paper on immigration in a couple of weeks. It's a very hotly anticipated white paper because the Labour government hasn't done very much in terms of immigration since coming into office in July last year. One of the things that's been talked about, and that was highlighted in an article by The Times on the 25th of February, is that the government is going to make it a requirement for those applying for graduate visas. Graduate visas are basically the different side of the same coin. It's very similar to HPI, but it's for those who qualify in the UK. So those who graduate from UK universities. The requirements are very similar to HPI. And the government wants to cull the number of graduates who stay on in the UK, because currently about 150,000 students stay on the UK after graduation. And because students, for whatever reason, despite many, many, many years of lobbying to declassify them, are classified as migrants, because most stay on in the UK for 12 months and longer. Therefore, if 300,000 students come to the UK, they just add to the net migration numbers. And if they stay longer, the government's aim currently is to reduce the net migration numbers. That means that they want students to come in, finish their degrees, and go away. Instead of, and of course, this greatly clashes with the government's plan to retain talent. So it's not quite clear how the government will actually resolve it and what the criteria for the graduate level jobs will be that they need to secure while they're here as graduates. Because right now, graduates, same as HPIs, do not require a job offer to stay on. They can spend 2 or 3 years looking for jobs, which is exactly what they're doing, because there is a distinct lack of jobs on the market right now. I'm going to disillusion you now. The employment market is in a bit of a slump, but I'm sure it will pick up during the year. It's because of the inflation levels and tax reform that the Labour government brought in at the end of last year. But as this government beds in and settles down, I'm sure that the employment market will pick up. And I think around the time that you graduate, or some of you will graduate this summer, it will be a good idea to pick up the subject again. But I would say start looking for jobs well in advance of even considering applying for HPI, because it can take weeks or months to find something that you like. Hopefully, the changes will not significantly impact on the eligibility criteria for HPI visa applicants. But if the changes are made, then I'm happy to talk you through them, because I will be publishing separately an overview of the white paper when it comes out, because it will touch upon several areas in several categories within UK immigration law, which is bound to have a reverberating effect across a number of categories. Right, Hal, now we're going to go into Q&A time.
Great. Thank you so much, Elena. That was super informative and pretty succinct for the amount of information that you were able to cover. So we're all grateful to you for that. We had a lot of
I'm
really
watching
great.
the screens very carefully to make sure people are
Yeah.
not yawning or switching off.
So we've got a lot of really great questions that were coming through. So let's see how quickly we can go through them. The first is from a current undergraduate student who has not yet completed their program. They wanted to know, when is the earliest date we can apply for the high potential individual visa? And does the 2-year period start when they are accepted for the visa or once they arrive in the UK?
Okay, so the first part of the question is very easy. The earliest you can qualify to apply is the date of award. So as soon as you get your award certificate or transcript of results, you may get both on the same day, you can go and apply to Actis. And once Actis provides you with an equivalency letter, you will be able to make the application. What was the second part?
The second part was, when does that 2-year period officially start?
So it starts from the time when you enter the UK, because then essentially your e-visa will tell you when your period starts.
Great. There was another question related to partners applying, and if you are on a high potential individual visa and you apply for a partner to come with you, does that partner have permission to apply for jobs in the UK as well, even if
Yes.
they don't have a Duke degree or a degree that's on that qualifying list?
The dependent partner will have an ability to apply for any job that they wish. They also will not be able to work as a professional sports person. Otherwise, they're able to secure jobs in the same way as the main applicant, despite not having graduated from Duke, because the main eligibility requirements are on the main applicant.
Great. Next one, if a job application asks if you will require sponsorship for a visa, is it okay to answer no if you've been approved for an HPI visa, or does the 2-year limit of the HPI visa affect your decision on how to answer that question?
I think it's a time-sensitive question, because if the question relates to the immediate job, then in order to take up that job, you do not need to have a visa, unless, of course, it offers. Actually, you're not precluded from taking on a permanent contract either. There is no prohibition against that. So I would say the answer to that question is no. But if you wish to stay on that job beyond the 2 or 3 year period, I would check whether that employer is a sponsor. Again, your reference point is the register of sponsors that you can check online, and also start having conversations with your sponsor pretty much straight off to explain, because employers in the UK are familiar with our immigration system. You can tell them you have HPI or applying for HPI, then therefore you do not need to have a visa right now. But if you are to stay on in your position and you would like to, and it is an eligible job with an appropriate salary and a job title, then make sure that your employer is willing to sponsor you and has appropriate allocation of certificates of sponsorship that will enable them to sponsor you. It's a conversation with HR, basically. And I think it should be a conversation that should happen quite earlier on, and should also be recorded either in your employment certificate or another document, because a promise made verbally is very difficult to challenge later if it's not acted upon.
Great advice. Thank you. This was a question pertaining to what the HPI can be used for. Student asked, can you use the HPI visa to do a summer internship? Or do you need to use a different type of visa if you want to come over for, I presume, a temporary opportunity?
You can use HPI for a summer internship. It doesn't preclude you from doing one. The internship programs are very, very limited in the UK. The very few immigration categories allow you to do paid or unpaid internships. For example, being a visitor precludes you from doing paid or unpaid work, so you can't do internships whether they're paid or unpaid. You can do internships as a student, as a graduate, as an HPI, and there is one category called GAE within the temporary work route that allows you to do government mandated internships. But the short answer is yes, you can do summer internship using your HPI.
Perfect, thank you. One question related to, I think this is a pretty clear one, the duration of your ability to apply for the HPI. So you mentioned the qualification must have been awarded within 5 years prior to the application being made. Does that mean I can still apply for an HPI visa 4 years after I graduated from Duke?
Correct. So the only thing to watch out for is the date of award. Don't miss the 5-year mark.
Yeah, great. This question may have partially been covered already, but I'll throw it out there anyways. If you get a full-time job offer within 2 to 3 years of staying in the UK on the HPI, will you need a company's sponsorship to transition to a work visa, or can you do it on your own with the job offer letter? I think you kind of covered this in the other
so
categories.
You will need to transition to a skilled worker visa, and that's something that your employer will be able to sponsor you if that employer is a licensed sponsor. So I always encourage people, if they can, to secure a job, a starting job with a sponsor, because you need to plan things out. You need to question why you're coming to the UK. If you're just looking for any job to make some money, that's one thing. If you're planning a career, you need to do it step by step. Therefore, some planning is involved here. So you need to think, what is your stepping stone? Your HPI is a great stepping stone for you to secure a job within a particular time frame. Then will then lead you to a sponsor job, and a sponsor job will be able to you will be able to do with a skilled worker visa. Once you have completed your skilled worker visa, in 5 years you will be able to apply for settlement, and it's one of those surefire visas because the qualifying criteria is quite simple. Once you have completed your skilled work, you get settlement, and in a year's time, you will be able to apply for British citizenship. That's it. And then once you have settlement, you have no constraints. You have no immigration constraints anymore. You can leave your employment. You can set up a business. You don't have to work. You can do whatever you want because your immigration restrictions fall away at that time.
Great. Thank you. Does the HPI allow for non-student academic work, such as a postdoctoral scholarship or a staff or faculty role at a university?
Yes. Basically, there are no restrictions in that respect. You can always, if HPI is not an option for you, perhaps global talent is, because global talent is something you need to be working towards, perhaps, if you are looking at postdoctoral work, because that again leads potentially to settlement within 3 to 5 years. And it's a great way to get to settlement because it looks at your achievements and your ability to bring benefits to the UK, in this case, academic benefits. So, of course, academics can also secure skilled worker visas, but it's much more difficult. So people from academia have a few bites of the cherry. You can start with HPI and progress to global talent and or skilled worker, depending on the job offer and if there is a job offer. Because if there is no job offer, you can still apply for global talent because your application can then be peer reviewed.
Great. One other question. What are reasons that people get rejected for the HPI visa? Will the deciders be receptive to applicants who are hoping to work in the arts?
The reason there are very, very few. If you look at the refusal rate on HPI, it's quite low because the application rate is quite low. And I think the reason why the application rate is quite low is because this is why I'm doing it. Very few people are aware that this route actually exists. People who arrive in the UK and then graduate in the UK are informed by their respective universities that they qualify for graduate visas at the end of their studies. I don't know a lot of universities on the GOL list who actively inform their graduates that they qualify for HPI. This is why I'm doing this almost worldwide tour of webinars to inform recent and past graduates of this wonderful route before it disappears, because you never know with the UK government. It's here one day, gone the next. We're not quite Trumpian, but our immigration system can be quite willful. So it's a very, very recent, very fresh, very interesting tool for you to be able to use and utilize in order to be able to start your career in the UK. So in terms of being receptive to hoping to work in the arts, again, this is something that, for example, if you already have a track record working in the arts and you need a couple of more years to show yourself, this is something you can use to plan your jump into global talent. Because if you're applying under arts and culture category, this is something you can use. You can use the time spent in the UK working in the arts to further your career and to be able to qualify for global talent later on.
Great. There was one question that just came through that I think we can answer really quickly. Will this HPI route be terminated someday? Is this a long-term policy by the UK government? I think, as you were saying, Elena, right now it's secure, but it could very quickly and easily change, either in terms of the regulations or the avenues that are available. So the sooner you're able to take advantage of this route, the better.
Immigration policies and immigration systems worldwide are fluid. They are very much dependent on the politics of the day, and especially geopolitics. Immigration is always a hot topic every day in the UK, in the US. It's an electionable topic as well. So every new government that comes in wants to make a stand insofar as immigration is concerned. This particular government, the Labour government, has not done very much to change the conservative policies so far. This is why everyone is anticipating the white paper, because the white paper will only pave the way. It's basically a to-do list. It does not mean that it will be implemented in full. It does not mean it will be implemented tomorrow. But as we know, a couple of weeks ago, the government published its AI action plan. And part of the AI action plan is looking at the existing categories, and that includes HPI. They have a deadline of this summer to review existing immigration categories to ensure that the UK will be able to attract and retain tech talent, essentially. We have a number of existing categories, such as global talent. Tech Nation, for example, is a fantastic category that allows those who live and operate within the digital tech space to secure jobs in the UK. But our immigration system is still quite awkward, and it's not easy to navigate sometimes. Therefore, I think they're trying to, with one hand, ease certain restrictions and make it easier for people to apply where the UK sees the benefit in having certain people here, and make restrictions elsewhere to meet the net migration requirements, because the government under a hell of a lot of pressure from other populist parts of basically from other parties, to make a stand on net migration, because our net migration will soon reach 1 million people, which is not tenable for a population just above 65 million people. So we will see. It's very difficult to foresee what else is in this white paper that's coming out in March. But if the government is not making immediate changes, and I'm sure the white paper will mention the rollout timetable, because things very rarely happen immediately in immigration, it's very unlikely that the government will make a snap decision to get rid of the HPI visa because of the relatively small numbers. And I think this is one category that the government is very eager to leave alone, because it's a category that's aimed specifically at the top 50 universities around the world. And these are the type of graduates that they're looking for to fill positions in the UK. So I think for now, and I don't have a crystal ball or a magic 8 ball or any ball, but I think I can say with some confidence that the government will probably leave HPI alone, but will definitely reform the graduate visa.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elena. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining today. I hope that you found this session to be helpful and informative. Elena, this was fantastic. Thank you so very much, and have a great rest of your day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.